At the Israelite base camp in Gilgal, Joshua stands before a gathering of tribal elders. He is in his late 80s now. His robe is worn at the hem from decades of travel, his face deeply lined by the desert and war. Yet his presence remains commanding. A beat of stillness. Then the environment shifts. A sudden wind rises through the camp. God speaks to the aging general, delivering a stark reckoning. You are old, you have come in years, and much of the land remains to be inherited. This is not a rebuke, it is an acknowledgement of reality. Joshua led this nation out of the wilderness and broke the back of Canaanite resistance over 5 brutal years. But the magnificent conquest is unfinished. Look to the west. The Philistine lords still hold their coast. From the Shihor River at Egypt's edge, all the way to the northern border of Ekron, 5 major strongholds stand defiant under the open sky, their mud brick and stone walls unbroken by any Israelite siege. To the north, Canaanite forces remain deeply entrenched. They hold the towering Lebanon mountain ranges and the distant Giblite shoreline stretching toward Hamat. The 19th century biblical commentator, known as the Malbim, looks at this geography and poses a central question. Why would God explicitly command Joshua to allot borders for a territory that is not yet physically in his army's hands? The answer to the Malbim's question rests in the exact vocabulary of God's command. God tells Joshua to distribute the land to Israel as nachalah, not yerushah, but nachalah. Yerushah names a physical transfer of possession by force. One holder is driven out and another moves in. That is what happened when the walls fell at Jericho and when the armies clashed in the valley of Ayalon. The land was taken. Nachalah is a completely different concept. It names a covenant title, an inheritance anchored entirely in divine promise rather than physical possession. This is the word God applies to the unseen, unconquered highlands. To seal this, God adds an emphatic guarantee. I myself will drive them out before the children of Israel. The actual work of emptying the land is a task God reserves for himself. This clarifies Joshua's final commission. He was never meant to be the eternal engine of military conquest. His role is strictly to be the apportioner of the covenant inheritance that God will secure. Back at Gilgal, the elders unroll the heavy scrolls. Much of chapter 13 is a precise record of the eastern territories already distributed by Moses to the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh. The landscape east of the Jordan is broad and open. It begins in the south, where the Arnon River cuts a deep rocky canyon toward the Salt Sea. Above the canyon stretches the Mishor, a wide, windswept tableland marked by the low mud brick settlements of Heshbon. Moving north, the forested ridges of the Gilead highlands rise sharply. Beyond them lies the massive volcanic plain of Bashan, a plateau holding 60 formidable fortress cities, all previously broken by Moses. Buried deep in these territorial lists, an infamous name surfaces: Bilam son of Beor. The foreign diviner who tried to curse Israel died by the Israelite sword in this exact region. The text notes his death in one blunt line, with zero ceremony. East of the Jordan, Joshua acts merely as an administrator, preserving an established legacy. The true test of faith waits across the river, in the unfinished west. As the territorial inventory concludes, a glaring omission stands out. The tribe of Levi receives no allotted region. They are completely excluded from the physical borders. Their physical sustenance flows entirely from the fire offerings at the portable tabernacle. The Levites tend the white linen courtyard and the altar of rough, unhewn fieldstones, living strictly on the tithes of the nation. The Malbim poses a final question. Why didn't Moses simply section off a designated province for the Levites out of the massive eastern lands he conquered during his own lifetime? Because Levi's inheritance is the divine promise itself. You can separate a piece of physical land to give to a tribe, but you cannot deed or geographically section off a share of the divine the way you would a pasture. The designated Levitical cities will only be carved out later, acting as a unified national tithe, raised simultaneously from every tribe, only after the full map is drawn. The chapter states their unique status plainly. God himself is their inheritance. The Eastern record stands sealed. Joshua enters his final years with the vast unconquered western horizon stretching before him, and the second phase of the biblical narrative begins.